For today's video, something a little bit different. I'm near Stockholm in Gnesta, where we lived when I first moved to Sweden. And I met Wilbert and we lived in a small community together. And in this unsuspecting little building, he has a family income microbrewery. And I think it's nice to go check that out. Hey! It's super nice to be here.
Yeah.
And we must have met back in 2013?
I don't know,
or 2014? You had just moved to Sweden with your family?
Yeah,
I just
exactly.
moved to Sweden. So
Yeah.
we were living at a small community very close by here. And, well, we were brewing little home beers.
No, well, the thing is, he wanted to make beer. So what he did, he bought this can of syrup. You have to add water and then, cool it down and add yeast. And then people said, wow, that's simple. That's how you make beer. No, that's not how you make beer. I didn't see any grains, So he was fermenting, yeah.
And then you...
But yeah, you introduced me.
Well, then you took that quite serious, didn't you?
Well, I thought like, no, that's not how you brew beer. You start with grains.
Yeah.
So yeah, from the start, and around that time, also Oklahoma University, they had a course, the chemistry of beer, and I followed that. I followed that twice actually, and after already a lot of internet research, I knew quite a lot, but it was nice to see it, really from the start to
the whole process,
exactly.
to manage that. Yeah. You wanted to buy a farm that you could have the brewery on.
Ideally, yeah, we want to have it on our own property. Yeah.
Yeah. And you might even move it to your own property when you
at
find
some
it.
point. I mean, that's the nice thing about having a small brewery. You can take it
mobile.
Yeah, exactly. And the countryside, I did IT before, and an IT job you don't find everywhere, at least not on the scale that I was used to. But a brewery you can just take wherever you want.
Yeah. So you've been going 3 years, is that right?
No, 4 years.
4 years now. Yeah. And the aim is to get a family income with one person job and keep not grow the business, keep it like at a sustainable level.
The size it is right now, it's a one man's operation.
Yeah.
And people are used to these huge factories. So they also ask me, what is your vision on the future? They want me to expand
and get bigger.
Yeah, but
keep it simple.
Yeah, like a carpenter. You don't ask a carpenter, when are you going to start hiring people? It's
you do your thing and keep it at a sustainable
exactly.
level.
And where I grew up next to Belgium, it was quite normal. Every village had a family-run brewery, and they did it with their family and. Maybe hired one person, but that was it. They didn't want to grow bigger. They just want to have it. Yeah.
It's quite the setup, Will. But this is tell us a bit how you got started. You rent this building, and then you lease the equipment, a lease to buy for the equipment. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. We really started with zero money. So we just made a business plan. We went to the bank and said, "This is our plan. This is the money we need." And please give it to us.
And they were into the idea.
Absolutely, yeah. But it means that we're 4 years in the run now, and we paid off the first loan. But one
awesome.
more year, and then equipment is paid off.
That's awesome. But this is all from the UK. This
setup? This is a traditional real ale setup, as they call it. It's very close to home brewing, just on a bigger scale.
Yeah.
I can brew 1,000 liter, but lots of times I still keep it to 500 liters.
Yeah.
That is about what I can also bottle in one day.
So we'll get into the technicals, but what's the sort of how much does this sort of gear cost? What are you looking at as the initial investment to get started?
It all depends on what your expectations are. Do you want to make money right away? Do you want to invest in it first? Do you have your own place where you can set this up? We have to pay rent each month. It all counts up. So you need to have a starting capital. You need to buy stock, your bottles and your malt and your.
Can you give us a ballpark figure? Is it 40 grand, 50 grand? 100 grand?
Somewhere between 50,000 and 100,000 euros, I would say.
Yeah.
That's and depending on how handy you are, you know, if you have a friend that is a stainless steel welder,
You could make some of the gear. But you essentially bought like a turnkey solution. That you could just bring it in here and off you go, sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And what sort of
so
volume?
from day one, and in Sweden it's a little bit difficult because there are some bumps, especially when you start the first year. You just end up in the local Systembolaget,
So that's
the
something
state-run shop.
Something to clarify is like Sweden, basically anything above 3.5%. Is that right?
Yeah.
You can buy a low alcohol beer in the supermarket, but anything stronger than 3.5%, you have to go to the government shop.
Yeah, and I'm not allowed to sell strong beer.
Yeah.
Like a 3.5, I can get a permit to sell 3.5 to the public, and then I can sell beer to anybody who has a liquor license.
Or to Systembolaget.
Yeah.
And
if I want to have it on a shelf where people can go and grab a bottle, Systembolaget.
And is it a benefit in one way that because there's a monopoly on alcohol, they have to stock your beer? Is that correct, or?
Yes and no. You know, it's locally they have to put you on the shelf locally, but that means, you know, if you're starting your brewery in a small town, you also have to, you know, that's your only market.
Yeah.
Unless you're focusing on people that ordering beer, and then you really have to have specialty beer. So you have to make a choice there. Are you going to brew for the local market, or are you brewing for people that normally like to order beer?
I know you're very interested in the alchemy of brewing, and you've made a whole load of different beers, but maybe just give us a summary of like the style and approach you have.
Yeah. Two versions. We have a normal ale, you can say a normal. Next to that, we have a barrel-aged wild ale. Wild ale is fermented with a wild yeast and or bacteria. Yeah, that is the better product. It is way more interesting. It has a long shelf life, but it's a specialty product. And locally, we sell a few, boxes here and there, but it's not enough. We cannot, if you produce a wild ale, you cannot sell that to the local market. So you have to rely on people that. So you really have to work on your brand
and marketing. You've got a strong brand with your hair. And
It was so difficult to come up with a logo. I want to have something Dutch. So first, wooden shoes, windmills, cheese, and it was also cheesy. So then one day I just, it's a one man's business. So I just took a picture of myself, traced the outlines, and voila.
I think it's awesome.
Yeah, the name, by the way, it was a neighbor who came up with that. It's a play with words. You have the Brewing Dutchman and the Flying Dutchman, and they sound pretty much the same. Mm-hmm. The Vlugende or the Bruggende Holländer.
Yeah, nice.
So that's, So we had the name, and then the logo came later.
So these are current beers that you're brewing. What have we got here?
Yeah, well, for instance, play with words. Elderflower beer. Elderflower in Swedish is flatter, so we called it "Don't flatter yourself." It's all hand picked flatter. Nice. I picked together with my daughter. We rent a house on the farm. The farmer helps us as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really nice. A Christmas beer. It's a triple. We have a lot of Belgium-inspired beers. Because it's also, when you have a setup like this, clearly you're not going to brew the perfect lager. So you have to, focus on what you can and not on what you can't. You can make a real proper ale. So the focus, for instance, on yeast, the flavors on yeast, and not the flavors of your hops. Your hops, they're going to oxidize, and it's not going to be as good. But yeast, it benefits from having a little bit introduction of oxygen. It's a plus. It's also, that's what I grew up with. You can get so much interesting flavors out of your yeast. So a Belgian blonde, for instance, and a licorice stout.
Nice.
It's actually also a play with words, but not a lot of people know it. Licorice in Dutch means drop.
Ah, yes.
Translates into drop it.
And you started doing these big bottles now.
Yeah, and that is really where we want to end up.
You got really into barrel aged and wild yeast, haven't you? That's
Yeah.
like becoming your speciality.
Yeah, but it takes a really long time to get experienced.
Just got a bit of storage, so the main
Yeah.
production is all here.
Yeah.
What sort of output? Like, what's a weekly output here?
Well, it depends, of course, which season. You know, in the summer, I brew 500 liter a week.
Yeah.
But in January, it's possible that I brew just once a month. You know, it's January, everybody has
Sales
their
drops.
beers turn them out and their money. You know.
So what would be a yearly output on this scale?
With a setup like this and the cost I have, 500 liters a week will give you an income.
Year round, approximately 500 every week.
Yeah,
Something. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's
And
pretty
of
neat.
course that can.
Do you want to walk us through the setup then? So tell us
Yeah,
about the entire
sure.
process.
Okay, so we first start with hot water. You know, your grains, they have starches, they need to be broken down. The inside the husk, you have the enzymes that chop down the sugars. Depending on the temperature, there are two kinds of enzymes. One that chops off small sugars from the end. The other one chops the long sugars in half. So depending on the temperature, because they work at different temperatures, you set your mash in temperature. And then we have a ton, here we mix the grains together with the water. So here is where you break down the sugars. You determine if you're going to have a sweet beer or a dry beer. You know, people tend to say when a beer has body, it actually means it has quite some sugars left, but it gives this mouth feeling. Of course, your different grains also leaves flavor. You know, if you have a stout, it's a lot of roasted, toasted, you know, your chocolates and your black malt. You know, I just happen to have, you know, a black malt. It doesn't have much. You cannot make a beer out of 100% black malt. It doesn't have any starches, but it gives flavor. So flavor from your malt, breaking down sugars. Then it's going to sit here, depending on, you know, the beer style, a minimum of 1 hour. In that hour, you chop down your sugars. Then you start to sparge. So again, you set your sparge temperature, which is normally higher than your mash in temperature, and you're going to wash out your sugars. So that's what we do with a construction with a bucket. You know, you control the speed, you want to take your time, you know, the sugars have to dissolve in your hot water. So it's, it takes its time too. So slowly we fill up this tank. In this tank, there's heating elements. This one, the mash tank, doesn't have any heating element. We do a 1 temperature mash, which for most beer styles, it's okay. Sometimes you can play a little bit with it, because when we make a special mash for the beers that are fermented with a wild yeast, it's a little bit different. You know, you have to take different steps, different temperatures, but you can do that by just fill, you know, your mash thickness. So start really thick. So transfer here. Here we're going to boil your wort at that time. It's called wort.
How are you transferring? Just with a pump? You pump it
Now,
across?
like I said, it has a bucket which has two levels, and very slowly it's filling up, and it's that's my speed control.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah, slowly we just fill this up. This is where you add your hops and, you know, any other added ingredients that you want. You know, lemon peel, or I also have cacao, for instance. You can add during the mash. You can add flavors as well, but most of the time.
I know you were doing like with stale bread from the bakery here.
Yeah, I did that. It was difficult because I wanted to make the most sustainable beer possible. It has a terrible label, by the way. But yeah, they had leftover rye bread, an ecological rye bread, the local bakery. And I made beer out of it because it still has a lot of starches, which you can, you know, convert. Up until 25% of the beer we could make out of rye bread.
Cool.
And it actually left a really nice flavor. The only thing is, halfway through the baker changed owner. The bakery changed owner. And then the first bakery, he put quite some spices in it. and then it was actually really nice. It left but the supply, you cannot depend on leftover rye bread.
Yes.
So
That's a cool
it was
idea.
impossible to keep on the shelf, it's there or not, So yeah, we did it a few times, but it was not. It was not sustainable. The beer was, but not the supply.
Sure. And so how long is the process in this tank?
I do around 70 minutes.
Right.
So you do a boil for 70 minutes. You boil off DMS, dimethyl sulfate. Especially in the beginning, you can really smell it. It smells like cooked corn, like a vegetable soup almost. So you do the boil to sterilize, give flavors, isomerize your hops. Hops have oils. Those oils, you break down the molecule structure, and at high temperature, 100 degrees, they form a different, they form a different structure. It's a chemical process where you don't lose any, you still have the same atoms, they just rearrange differently, which turns from an oil into something that tastes quite bitter. So you make your beer bitter. You can also extract your oils, but you have to do that or at a lower temperature, for instance, during the fermentation, or during flame out. During a flame out, you add your hops, the oils, release, and if you don't give it enough time, there's still some oil not being isomerized. So after the boil time, it goes through the heat exchange. So while I'm cooling down my beer, I'm heating up the water for the next brew. So ideally, you brew beer, twice in a row, so then you're most efficient.
Saving energy.
Yeah, because in the winter it really makes a huge difference.
Sure.
It can be 8 degrees from the tap, but after I have cooled down my beer, it's above 40. So it's really saving energy there. After the heat exchange, it goes into the fermentation tank.
Are these two tanks, they're the same for two different brews, or?
Yeah, exactly. So I can have 2 beers brewing. Like I said, I like to brew twice in a row. So that's most of the time, that's my schedule. I brew twice a week, and then there will be a week of bottling, and then I can brew a beer again.
So beer comes out of there, goes into, what's this, pressure chamber, or?
Well, they are pressure tanks, but I don't use them as pressure tanks because I don't force carbonate. You can push the bubbles into your beer. You can just have a big CO2 tank, a closed container, and then you open up your CO2 and you press it into your beer. I like to bottle condition, as they call it. So I like to add a little bit of sugar before the beer goes into the bottle. And then the yeast by itself creates the CO2.
In the bottle?
Yeah.
And this is your bottling machine?
This, yeah.
So it's quite simple
Very
setup?
simple, exactly. The beer goes into this tank. In this case it has a plastic bag inside. It saves me cleaning time. And from there it goes into the bottle. I mixed the beer with some bottling sugar. And then it goes into it's very simple. It's just a gravity filler. There's actually some components in there
So it fills to the correct sort of amount in the bottle, and then
exactly. So
you're hand capping on the...
Yeah, it's 2 on, 2 off,
Using this this machine. So you got your labels and your... That's pretty neat. So that's... Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, everything is really simple. It's it's a hand capper, so it's a lot of work.
What's that in bottle? Like 500 liters? Is that 1,500 bottles?
Yeah, 1,500 bottles. So yeah, it's 1,500 times pressing on the...
So you get pretty efficient at little time motion things of how to do the least movements possible.
It's a very close, you're not going to do the full motion all the time,
Sure.
You get And yeah, you get this muscle memory, you know, where you don't
totally.
have to look.
Totally, that's a lot of what my work is.
But that's also the reason why we're focusing on the big bottles. You know, it's
Less work for bottling, and it's a
Exactly.
special beer, so it's kind of like
It is a unique beer. You know, if you're small, if you're producing a small amount, you can target also a small market, because the market is there. You know, and
it's growing all over the world, right? For artisanal small breweries, it seems to be.
and you know, I don't want to make it arty-farty. You know, I don't like to make it hipster. You know, it's just returning to brewing beer as being a profession. You know, something that you can do and produce small amounts and make a living out of it.
Yeah.
You know, and then especially here in Sweden, before they became part of Europe, it was a wasteland. You know, because they had some problems before with alcohol. At some point, there were just like 5 breweries left, and they all made the same
Crappy lager.
Yeah, well, a little bit soulless.
Generic,
know?
yeah.
No, I would not enjoy that. You know, it's the same soulless beer.
Yeah.
And it's nice now, and because when Sweden became part of the European Union, some guy said, "Hey, I should be able to make beer now too." You know, before the state regulated who was allowed to brew beer, and then which resulted in only having just 5 breweries. So he just started, and there was no paperwork because nobody knew. Oh, someone is going to make beer now too. How are we going to do this?
What is it about, you were talking yesterday when we met briefly about like in other countries there are tax breaks for small brewers, whereas in Sweden you've got a bit of problems. Yeah. Tell us a bit about that.
In general the alcohol tax is really high. It's hard to make a living out of brewing beer in Sweden if you're so small. And a lot of these breweries, they're also on the countryside. And in the rest of Europe, if you brew a small amount, you're allowed to pay less taxes over your alcohol. A country doesn't have to how do you say that? Imply that? It doesn't have to doesn't have to follow that rule. But it's something that you can do to stimulate small business. Yeah, and especially on the countryside, that would really help.
So what is the tax here, just for reference for people watching from America or whatever?
Well, to give you one example, we exported beer to Holland. It went wrong. The company that received the beer had their paperwork for all kinds of alcohol except for beer, so we had to pay taxes over it, while they pay taxes over the same amount in Holland. So over 100 liters we paid 1,000 crowns, so that's
100 euros.
100 euros, $100 for 100 liters of beer. And then we thought, well, since they also paid in Holland, maybe we can get that money back. And then we cut the paperwork there, and it turned out it was 8 euros.
Wow.
So the same amount of beer,
12 times different.
It's 8 euros or 100 euros. That's about
that will be news for some people. So these barrels are quite prominent. Tell us about, because that's definitely something you're very interested in.
Yeah, we started playing with it from the start. Like I said, we add a wild yeast. Wild yeast. If you have an apple and starts to ferment, it's because of wild yeast.
What does that look like in brewing terms? Like, where do you get wild yeast, or is it just from the air? Like, how's the process?
No, it's not as spontaneous. You can also have a spontaneous beer, like a proper lambic. They have, it's called the cool ship. It's a big metal floor, and after brewing the beer, they just pour it out on this floor.
So it fills the room.
Windows, alongside. They all have windows alongside. Open it up, and over the night they just let.
This is Belgian beer?
Yeah, that's a spontaneous fermented beer. It takes about a year to really ferment out, because this wild yeast, Brettanomyces, is quite slow, but it chops up really long sugars. A normal ale yeast can only convert really small sugars. But a wild yeast finds its way to get their energy out of even more than sugars. You know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So how would it work in your case? Like, what does it mean for you to have a wild yeast? What does it look like in the recipe?
I buy it from the lab. So
as a cultured wild yeast.
Yeah, exactly. And you can choose the region. You know, you have well, in this case, an Lambikus. I also have a Brusselensis, comes from Brussels. You know, it's
So let me just clarify then. So you buy for a lab so that you have a homogeneous, you're predictable in the outcome, but you're choosing it because of its different ability to convert sugars and the taste, essentially.
Mostly the taste.
Yeah.
I mean, there's quite some difference in how Brettanomyces gets their energy, what they can convert. But it's mostly the flavor you after. You know, they describe the flavors as being funky. You know, just wet dog, horse blanket, barnyard. You know, it's not smells that you
kind of like the culture of cheese and things like that.
Exactly. You know, it's like French cheese. You know, it's like, it stinks so much. I need to smell it again. You know, it has this animalistic attraction to it. You know, you smell it and this is so weird but so good. You know, it's
So tell us what are
and super dry. All these beers, because of the the yeast breaks down the sugars. They're super dry.
Yeah.
Most of the time, the wild yeast can also create some acidity. You can enhance that acidity by adding a mixed culture of bacteria. What I have done is have one barrel focusing on bacteria, so I can blend, because you want to have the right amount of acidity. It is a bit of a sour beer, and you need to have that funkiness, it's difficult to predict, because you can have the same wort, the same beer in your beer, have the same culture, and still the outcome is different. You know, you can have one beer that is really funky, that just has too much barnyard, you know, and it has to be just on that, you know, it's a very precise
You're an alchemist.
level you want to aim for.
But what did
blending is a big part, and we only have, how much barrel do I have? 4, 5, 6, 12, maybe something like that.
Tell us about the barrels though. Are they come from different places, and the purpose is to give a different flavor and to mature the beer, right?
Yeah.
But
where did the beer to create the right environment for your yeast? That's
but where did
you want to micro oxidize. You want to keep feeding your yeast with a little bit of oxygen, just a tiny bit. You could actually also just do it in stainless steel. But it's nice to keep your yeast alive. Of course, the wood itself will give flavor as well.
So what were these barrels used for previously, and where did you get them?
Red wine, and I get them from Belgium. I bought some here in Sweden as well, but they were pretty crappy. Keeping a barrel, especially when it's empty, keeping a barrel clean, it's a skill. In Belgium, there's one company. It's an old family-run business. They have been doing it, for 100 years. They everything with barrels. They clean barrels. Refurbish barrels. They put stamps on it, there the quality is really good. Of course, you have to prepare your barrel. When you get it, what I do is fill it up with really hot water, like 90 degrees water, not only to kill whatever is inside, but also to set the barrel. It will expand, because in the beginning it leaks. The wood shrinks, and I had one barrel. I tried to fill it up just with the hose, and the water ran out as fast as I. So I also steam them if a barrel is really dry, when the gaps are too big. I just put the steam machine in there, and after an hour it's pretty much set. So I use hot water and steam, and once the barrel is clean and in use, you fill them up immediately, after emptying. Then the barrels are never empty. As soon as they're empty, and especially if there's some residue, things start growing in it, and it might not be things you want to grow. Blending is a big part of creating the final product. And I just have these nails in here. So you really don't want to.
You just bang the nail through the cars.
Yeah, I just drilled a hole, put a nail in there, because you don't want to open it up and disturb the beer. So you just
poke that out and take a little sample.
Yeah, you take a sample. Put your glass under there, and then and that's the fun part.
How often do you have to sort of come down here and do testing then?
We do, well, since it takes about a year, and that's the thing. It's a year in the barrel, and then at least half a year in the bottle. So after half a year, I'm going to taste them. It's a little bit silly to do it before, because I know that the beer hasn't really developed yet to its potential.
So obviously, I guess like with any small business in the very beginning, when you're setting up, you're doing overtime and all that. But give us a rundown of like now it's up and running. Like, what does a work week look like, and what sort of percentage of your time goes into what jobs?
It really needs to be a passion. Making beer, you're not going to get rich on this, unless you're extremely creative. We also, I do a lot around it. We go to a lot of festivals, so it's a lot of work in the weekend as well. As
part of your marketing and getting out there.
And then it's actually part of our income as well. The same as giving courses. We have home brewing courses. But the normal daily routine, to give you an idea, we still have kids, and I pick them up from school. I can brew a beer. It's only when bottling can take a little bit longer. But most of the time when bottling, I have help. And when I have help, I can still do it within the normal working day hours.
What's the normal work hours for you? Because it just differs in very different places, I guess.
To give you an idea, let's say one day brewing, one day bottling, one day labeling, and then there's a day where you do your deliveries.
Admin and deliveries.
And then there's one day left, most likely where you clean.
Cleaning.
Because cleaning, that's,
But what time would you start in the morning? Like 8, 9, something like that?
I bring the kids to school, so I start around 8:30.
And then you pick them up at 3:30?
I pick them up at around 4, somewhere between 4 and 4:30.
So quite easeful. And then the weekends is...
It's very doable.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Like I said, I only, because my wife, she works in Stockholm, she's the nerd, I'm the dork. So she has to commute, and she can pick up the kids if needed. So once a week she will pick up the kids, and then I can work a little bit longer. And then they walk over here. And sometimes my son is here as well, because on Fridays he doesn't go. He's too young. He doesn't go to school. He goes to the daycare.
So he helps bottle up.
Yeah, but I mostly put him somewhere on the chair, and he has to do his own thing.
He's too young.
He's great in finding the most breakable and most expensive thing. I have
He's not quite 5 yet, just for clarification.
No, exactly.
Awesome. So this is like your mobile bar that you take to events?
Yeah, it all fits in the Ford Transit.
Nice.
It's before it was in one piece, and it just fitted exactly. The last piece I had to push in with the door. And we go to a lot of these festivals. And now I broke it in 2 pieces because we have a Ford Transit with seats, so I can add less space. And I really like going to these festivals.
That's awesome. So you basically, this has been a big, tell us a bit about your marketing. Like when you're getting started, no one knows who you are. You don't know what goes on in Swedish brewing. Like how did you get started and get your name out and market things?
It's difficult because, so many regulations. You cannot really say, hey, I'm brewing beer, come get my beer. It's awesome beer. But there's a lot of festivals, a lot of beer and whiskey festivals or beer festivals. And we started doing that pretty much from day one. We started in Stockholm, a really big one. It takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, but you can, speak directly to people that buy your beer. And we made some mistakes because, like in the beginning, I did not have the logo on my bar. I just had a small sign, and we noticed. There was one time during a festival, people came to me. Now we know who you are. They had drank my beer the year before, but they had no idea. Then afterwards, like, who was that guy? I really try to. All my beers are a little bit different. So I really try to also, look different. Normally I have during the festivals a very colorful shirt because all the brewery industry, it's a lot of, tattoos, beards and black t-shirts, And I thought, let's do something different.
Make it more fun.
Yeah. A little bit more loose, a little bit more, Dutch.
And what sort of connections have come from this? Because I know you just shipped out a load of beer off to China, no?
Yeah, we got a little bit lucky there as well. The first year we had just started for 2 or 3 months. And then it was first Norway. 2 guys from Norway came and said, hey, we're looking for beer to export or to import for that. So the first year we exported to Norway, which is nice because moving pallets, it's way more efficient than moving boxes. Exported to Holland, and this year to China.
I bet you weren't expecting that.
No, hand bottled, crafted beer, and somebody in China is going to pop the bottle. It's like, wow, that's really nice.
What about the first brew though? Like, did you know how you were selling it? Did you have that lined up, or did you just go for it and?
From the beginning, since you end up on the shelf only locally in the town you're brewing, we haven't been focusing on selling locally. We really try to get out there and brew specialty beers to people that for the people that order normally beer. So we definitely had a marketing plan. I really don't like doing sales. So we haven't been focusing on selling our beers to bars and restaurants. That's also very time consuming. The first year, of course, you need to do that because you need to generate income. But it means driving around, making appointments,
making connections,
and most. It's the big town, Stockholm, where all the bars and the. So that means going there at night as well.
You said that's what you were doing in the first year.
Yeah. We sell most of it via the state shop, the Systembolaget. Every now and then we sell kegs, and there's another company that has the contact with the restaurants. So then we sell via them. We have them, but then most of the time, it's about a batch of beer. So then because you have to choose, are you going to put your beer in bottles or in kegs? Beer, like the wild ale, you're not going to put much in kegs. The market is too small for that. It's not a beer that you usually would have on tap.
So would it look like bottling up a batch and then Systembolaget take it and they would distribute it amongst the...
Each week you get an order, for so many boxes. Of course, when it comes to selling kegs, we have sold just batches, and then you sell all the kegs at once. They also have a system where you just they put it on their website, and then restaurants can order it, and then you have to. But again, then it might be possible that you have to drive around just for a few kegs, and that is just. Driving around with just one box or
it's not worth it.
No. So you really have to focus.
But then for Swedish folks,
export is really nice, and then Systembolaget, and to be able to be in the order assortment we have to drive quite a lot, but then I take turns with other breweries, so we take
You
each
share
other's
the load.
orders. Yeah,
That's cool. Because there's other small breweries in Gnesta here, isn't there?
as well. Yeah,
It's a small town of what, 10,000 maybe?
I have
5,000?
no idea.
It's a small town,
more
but
focused on the local market.
Yeah.
They're,
for reference, we're like 40 minutes outside Stockholm, but it's quite rural here, isn't it? In relative terms. But then the good thing for Swedish viewers is they can order any of your beers via Systembolaget to have it shipped there.
A lot of breweries, they talk bad about Systembolaget because it is quite a lot of extra rules and regulations, on how your label should look like, even one time I had a strong beer and the alcohol percentage written down, the font was too big. I said, no, you're trying to promote,
strong beer. Oh gosh.
But things like that, and so there's a lot of. But again, focus on the positive and focus on what you can and not on what you can't. And a wonderful distribution system it is. I mean, even if there were other options, I would still very much like to do business with this state shop because of this ordering assortment that they have. And there's a lot of, if you have a new beer and it's an interesting beer, of course, if you brew a pale ale or an American pale ale or an IPA, there's so much already, people might not order that one unless it's very special. But a barrel-aged beer, there's not a lot of people doing that.
How would someone, like if someone wanted to export your beer, how would they find it and get in touch with you?
The interwebs, of course, our website.
So someone can order a pallet of beer anywhere, basically.
Yeah.
Might be some Japanese people watching. I'm just thinking, the way I can relate to a space like this is dairy or a slaughter facility or something. I imagine the regulations are a lot about protocols and cleaning, no?
Yes, absolutely.
So tell us a bit about that.
What to do with your waste. So if you're planning to start your own brewery, I have one really big tip, and that is get one of these. It's silly, but to have a drainage in the middle of your brewery, and you can just use a squeegee and because you are going to clean a lot, and it's nice to hose everything down and just.
Is this something you installed when you rented the place then?
No, this is something that they already planned. But the floor, how do you say that?
To have like an angled floor, yeah.
Yeah, and that really makes life so much easier. If you don't have things like this, there's going to be puddles with yuckiness, and it's a silly thing, but
it's them details that make a difference. Yeah. I know that, Wilbert, you've got so much incredible technical data, and I guess you've accumulated that from many different sources. Is there any key resources that you would point out to people that are interested? What's been big influences for you?
And most of it is just experience. Of course, the chemistry behind it. The Oklahoma course, the chemistry of beer. That's really nice. If you're interested in brewing beer, follow that one. But
is that like a free online course or something?
I don't know if they still have it online themselves, but you can probably find it on YouTube. But it does not tell you how much of fresh yeast equals this many liters of slurry. So a lot you just have to find out yourself. It doesn't tell, do I get an ester or a phenol when I ferment at this temperature? And you can read the package and it says it's going to taste like banana, but how much banana is it really? So at some point you
dive in there.
You have to do it and learn.
Learn through experience.
Yeah.
One of the things that connects brewing to farming is we've been raising forest raised pigs, feeding them predominantly spent grain.
Yeah.
And so that's, obviously the grain inputs and the grain outputs are an important part of cycling back into farming.
Yeah.
But maybe we can get back into that. But I'm interested in protocols. What are the regulations about clean down, etc.? Paperwork. Is it a lot of paperwork and stuff? Or?
Luckily, my wife, she's the paper ninja. Of course, we have the safety hazard CCP documents. It's very good to know what you're doing and think about and how you can do it better. In general, it is everything that first you clean and then you sanitize. Anything that comes in contact after the boil has to be cleaned and after that sanitized. Big breweries, they use lye and acids. I try to use more environmental friendly, but it means it's a lot of scrubbing as well. It's a lot of muscle work. Also the spent grains, you see the shovel over there. I have to shovel hundreds of kilos of spent grains. But yeah, and especially if you have mixed cultures, you don't want to mix them in your final product. So cleaning is such an it's the most important thing of brewing. And the wild yeast doesn't come in contact. I even have another bottling machine, especially for that. But even then, I boil everything. If there's a hose connection or if there's I just put it in the kettle and I just boil it.
And so really that protocol is key to creating consistent product and reliable product.
Yeah, because if you do get a yeast that is capable of fermenting further than the yeast that was originally planted, and you put it in a bottle and it's not done fermenting, you're over-carbonating your beer, and it's not something you want.
So I know one thing, like you obviously have built up a lot of expert knowledge, and you do some kind of workshops for people that want to learn to brew, don't you?
Yeah, and also to show them that you don't need much. It's a very simple, just one pan, a cooling spiral.
So that people can reproduce what you're doing at home on their own, low cost.
Yeah. And my first beers I also just made on a wood stove. You don't even need to have like a big gas burner. So just a pan and a cooler, and you're in business. And there are some key, moments that you have to really pay attention. But if you have those right, then it can't hardly go wrong. You will end up with a tasty beer.
So how often do you do that, and how do people find out about that?
In the beginning, I just shouted out like, hey, we're doing a brewing course. By now, people are calling me like, hey, most of the time for a special event, somebody's birthday, or it's
super nice.
An outing.
But people could find that on your website or Facebook, or we can stick that in the links below.
On Facebook, there's written down, and I try to also not make it too expensive, and most of the time it's people learn, but they're also busy, and they end up with a tasty beer. Most of the time we make a split batch to show them that you can make an IPA and a Belgian blonde all from the same pan, and then you can really taste where the flavors come from. The flavors from yeast or hops, it's so different. And if you do it yourself, you learn a lot. It's families again. You're supporting families instead of stockholders, and I think that is really nice. You can just it's a profession. It's a job, and I like that. And it's so much richer. That's also what I enjoyed going to Belgium. Like every little town has had a brewery, and they all made different beers. And that made, just traveling around tasting different beers. It's such an experience. If it was all run by the same, Coca-Cola everywhere. So it enriches life to have all small breweries, and they're all supporting families, and that's nice to see. It's returning.
We don't have time to drink beer today because I'm off to the airport now, but thanks so much for showing us around. I hope that was super interesting for you folks. Please let us know about what you thought of that and whether you found that interesting. I'm interested in the tour next year, filming anything connected to food and drink and life that's connected with agriculture. So I hope you find that interesting. You can find out all about Warburg's business in the links below, and we'll see you in a video soon. Bye for now.